Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, or good evening, based on where you're located in the world. I know we're joined in today from people across, really, from Middle East, from India to Southeast Asia, even Australia and New Zealand. So welcome, everybody, for our event today, which will focus on occupational health and safety. We'll cover the 45,000. We'll mention some trends in the market in occupational health and safety, and we'll even touch upon ISO 14,000, which is the environmental management system. My name is Ayman Kateli. I've been working with LRQA for the past 14 years, I would say. I'm based in Dubai. It's 10 a.m. my time. I'm not sure what's it your time, but it varies across, of course. I would say I'm handling mainly the sales for the Middle East area. I'm also managing a few key accounts here in our region. Our area really is based in SEMEA, so that's Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa. I'm excited today. Honestly speaking, it's a topic that has always been talked about. I can say from my personal experience even, and the clients we communicate with, especially after the COVID that happened, the focus on occupational health and safety has tremendously increased. Even companies during that period, I would say the investment from my personal experience have reduced, but companies quickly realized this. Not only even occupational health and safety or safety in general is important in the high-risk industries, it's equally now becoming important in the even low-risk industries, even office work. And one of the reasons, and even my colleague Mohammed will cover, is the psychological and mental health. After COVID, we've all been impacted on our personal level, even work-related. And from even that part, it's not only 45,000. I just have to mention, there's also another standard, it's the 45003, which even focuses more on psychological well-being, which covers in depth. We're not going to cover this in today's session, but if you have any questions in that regard, please don't hesitate to ask. So today we're joined, I want to introduce my colleague and friend. Honestly speaking, we've been working together during my tenure in LRQA for the past 14 years. His name is Muhannad Al-Kayed. Muhannad is our regional business manager for Jordan and Levant area. Muhannad has 30 plus years of experience in management systems and auditing. He audited, I would say, hundreds of companies across different sectors and industries. Not only auditing, I'm sure he trained even thousands of delegates on management systems, whether it's quality management, health and safety, environment, and many other standards. Mohammed is based in Jordan. He's not based in Dubai with me. I think it's about 9:30-ish his time. And also today we're joined by a special guest, Mr. Vidya. He's the corporate head of WCM and Integrated Management Systems at Hindalco Industries Limited, which is part of the ABG Group, Aditya Birla, of course. They are a prominent client for us, and there are leaders in the aluminum and copper manufacturing. Mr. Vidya will share his experience in terms of implementing management systems, challenges faced, benefits gained. So it's worthwhile to get this from him, and I would thank him really for joining us today. So thank you, Mr. Vidya, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. For the next 45 minutes, Mohammed, of course, will go ahead, will start and share with you points, and will cover the trends in this market for occupational health and safety. He will do a deep dive in the clauses. So as you know, the ISO 45,000 is based on certain requirements. So he will go take a deep dive into that part. He will cover the clauses and how they fit with the PDCA model. And we'll also, as we discussed, will cover some aspects of the 1401. So thanks a lot. I hope you have your pen and papers ready. If you have any questions, please mention it in the chat box. So there's a chat box on the side of the screen. Mention it in the chat box. We will not answer it maybe during the session, but there is a specific time allocated at the end of this presentation where Muhannad will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. And that's not it. If you still have any questions, please do get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions regarding to any standards, whether it's occupational health and safety, whether it's the 45003, whether it's the 1401, or the many other standards which is related to 14,000, such as the sustainability standards, GSG even, greenhouse gas emissions, and so forth. So please enjoy it. And Muhannad, over to you.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Good morning, good afternoon, all. It's really my pleasure to attend with you today. As Ayman mentioned, that I'm going to give us some maybe ideas, some of the details about the ISO 14001 and maybe 14,001 a little bit. But maybe I'm going to focus on something related to mainly legal compliance and risk management, and I would speak also about the megatrends in health and safety, which is mainly related to after COVID-19 pandemic. Many people maybe have suffered of that, and many companies they have addressed that. So I will talk about this a little bit. So again, it will be my pleasure to be with you. I hope you will enjoy it. I know that I'm going to cover some aspects of the standard, which sometimes might be a bit boring, but I hope it will be very interesting for you as well. Please, if you have any question during my presentation, you can just send it on the chat. Normally, I'm saying all my training courses that questions are really very important, and everybody will benefit from all the questions. So what we are going to cover today is the risk management and legal compliance framework within the ISO 14001 and 14,001. But maybe our focus will be on the health and safety standard. But as you see later on, they are really identical. I'll talk about the megatrends in occupational health and safety and how the ISO 14001 support this nowadays, and how it will we can focus on that on our in our companies, which is related to the third point. Then at the end, which is we talk about the benefits of having a certified OH&S system. Then we'll have a discussion with Mr. SV about how they have addressed the OH&S standard as 14,000 in their company, how they benefited from that, what the lessons learned, and so on. Then we'll have like a Q&A session. So the first part will be related to the risk management and legal compliance in the two standards. But before that, I just want to go to the basics, just to make sure that everything is clear for all of us. As you know, when we are talking about occupational safety, we are talking here about three things that I need to make it very clear for all of you. We are talking about occupation, we are talking about health, and we are talking about safety. So normally when we're talking about safety, it's related to all hazards that might affect any person or employee, but which will appear maybe as cuts or maybe injuries whatsoever. So it will be very clear, very immediate because of any accident or incident. But when we're talking about health, that needs some time, because when we're talking about health, that needs some time because we are talking about some maybe sickness, some ill, and this needs time to appear on any person. And this is, for example, very clear in nowadays practices in our offices. You hear about my back, my head, my eyes, my whatsoever. So this is related to illness, and it takes a bit of time. When we're talking about occupational health and safety, we are talking about any hazards that might affect our safety from outside, and anything that might affect our health from inside and will appear as health. And I think this is the now most important for many companies that we are talking about. And of course, both of them are related to our occupation, what we do, what work we are in, that will affect our health and safety. For environmental system, as you know, we are talking about any practices that might affect the environment. And I'm sure all of you can feel and see the impact of what we are talking about, environment. We are talking about changes in the climate, many issues that we are facing nowadays. So both standards, ISO 14001 and ISO 14001, have been issued or published from ISO to cover any management system that are related to health and safety and environmental system. And as you know, normally these systems or these standards are not just coming from nowhere. They have been built upon best practices, good practices. Many experts have involved in that, and many companies that can benefit from these two standards. Now, as you know, both standards, either ISO 40001 or 14001, are based on what's called plan to check cycle or dynamic cycle, which is very simple approach. We are talking about plan, whatsoever you want to do, then you have to do it, but then you need to check and act after that. And this is the detailed structure of the ISO 14001, and it's very similar and identical for the ISO 14001. As you know, maybe since 2013, all standards now have been established and published as per what's called Annex SL. In other words, ISO, they have decided at a certain time to make sure that all the standards, all management system standards, are following the same structure. Of course, the main reason for that, to enable all the companies to make it easier for them to implement all the standards together, which is called integrated management system. So as you can see here, all the standards now following what's called 10 clauses approach. It starts from clause number 1, 2, 3. Then we are talking about the main clause or key clause of the standard, which is from clause 4 to 10. We are talking about context of organization, leadership, planning, support operation, then performance evaluation. And in this case, we are talking about that all the standards now following the same standard, same structure to make it much easier for them. And specifically for the ISO 14001 and ISO 14001, 45001, they are maybe very identical, except there are maybe just 2 clauses in the standard that in the ISO 45001 that are extra from the ISO 14001. We are talking about this clause, which is consultation and participation, and of course we are talking about the other clause, which is incident non-conformity and corrective action. So this is maybe one of the most important two clauses that are different from ISO 14001 and 45001, but this is the main structure for the 2 standards. Okay, now when we're talking about the other if I to cover, I would say the legal compliance and the risk management part of the 2 standards. I would go to the scope of the ISO 40001, which is you will find it in the standard, which is in page number 1, clause number 1. As I mentioned, now the standard covering 10 clauses, were from clause number 1 to clause number 10. So as per the scope of the ISO 40001, if you notice, it focuses on that we have to provide safe and healthy working conditions for our people. of course, prevention of work-related injury, proactively improve its OH&S performance, and the most important one, which is applicable legal requirements and other requirements which the organization subscribes. So it's very clear in the scope of the standard that we have to make sure we are in compliance with all legal requirements. And by the way, this is the same issue with the ISO 14001. In other words, the bottom line for any company that want to get ISO 14000 or 45000 certified, they have to have a clear legal compliance with the applicable legal requirements in their country. Other than that, they will not get certified, and this is very important. So whenever we want to go and implement these two standards, the first thing, or one of the most important things that we have to cover, we need to go and look for all the standards and legal requirements that are applicable to us in terms of environmental health and safety, and we have to make sure that we are in full compliance with that. Now, this is the scope, but as you will see, you will find the same requirements are in other clauses of the standard. For example, if you are talking about the policy, and as you know, the policy is one of the main documents, and I would say requirements that should be, or according to the standard, shall be established by top management. So when we're talking about the policy, the top management shall establish and implement the policy, either the environmental or health and safety policy. And normally we try to verify that by making sure that it's signed by top management, by discussing it with the top management to make sure that they are really committed to these requirements. And as you can see here, maybe one of the most important points in the policy that it should include a commitment to satisfy applicable legal requirements. In other words, top management, they have to have a clear commitment to applicable legal requirements, either for environment or health and safety. In addition to that, there are other clauses in the standard that mandate us or any company to determine the applicable legal requirements and maybe other requirements. Of course, when we're talking about legal requirements, the requirements that are set by the country. When we're talking about other requirements, the requirements that as a company, we see it's very important for us that we have to comply with. And this is maybe something that normally the global companies, they are following. For example, we're talking about global companies, maybe they have to follow the rules or maybe other requirements that are set by the head office or their global headquarter offices. So according to the standard, all organizations, they have to determine, and if you notice, have access to up-to-date legal requirements. So all companies, they have to have a clear process on how to determine the legal requirements applicable to them, and how they and there should be a clear process on how to make sure they always have up-to-date and they are following on any updates on the legal requirements. And the second point, they have to determine how these legal requirements are applied to them. In other words, we need to make sure that we understand the legal requirements. We need to make sure what are the legal requirements applicable to us, how we make sure they are up to date, because to the truth, some of the concerns that we see at some companies, that whenever we go there, we can find that some of the legal requirements applicable to them, they are obsolete, they are not up to date. As auditors, we have to make sure that we are always updated with the legal requirements. So, all companies, they have to make sure they are up to date with all legal requirements. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we are monitoring and measuring our performance with regard to the applicable legal requirements. As you know, in health and safety or even environment, there are many things that we need to monitor and measure our performance related to that. For example, when we're talking about lighting, when we're talking about maybe emissions with regard to the environment. when we talk about even health issues. And as you know, some of these issues are supported by the legal requirements. And for many countries, they have clear legal requirements that they have to do some sort of medical check for all employees at a certain time, maybe once every year or once every 2 years, especially if the type of their industry is related or that might affect their health negatively on a time. So we have to make sure that we have a clear monitoring and measurement plan for all medical, health, and safety aspects related to our employees. And part of it will be related to the legal legal regulations that are set by the country. Now, in addition to that, we have, according to the standard, all companies, they have to do some sort of evaluation of compliance with the legal and the requirements. And this is very important. In other words, the standard is telling us that you have to identify the legal requirements, you have to measure and monitor your performance against these requirements, and you have to come up with a conclusion. Are we in compliance or we are not in compliance? Because if we are not in compliance, that might have some, I would say, maybe some sort of legal even fines on the company. So there should be clear statement on whether the company related to the evaluation of compliance with legal requirements, either related to health and safety regulations or environmental regulations. And in this case, top management, and this is very important, guys, top management should be involved, because in other words, we have to tell our top management that we are in full compliance or not. Because if any things happen, I mean, if we have really a violation of the legal requirements, maybe the first people that will be exposed to any fines will be top management. That's why they have to get notified about the evaluation of compliance, and if we are in full compliance or not, and if we're not, what we have to do. And this will be part of the management review. As you know, management review normally are chaired, normally chaired by top management. And as you see, one of the most important things as of the agenda of management review is what are the applicable legal requirements, any changes to applicable legal requirements, are there any new updates or whatsoever, and the results of evaluation of compliance for related to environmental or health and safety. So there should be clear discussion about the evaluation of compliance during management review, especially if we are not in compliance. So as you notice, many clauses in the two standards are covering the evaluation of compliance, and to make sure that we know our legal requirements, we are in full compliance, and evaluate that. Because as I mentioned before, the bottom line for any company that want to get certified, either especially for ISO 14000 and ISO 45001, they have to be in full compliance with the applicable legal requirements. In other words, it's not logical at all, it's not logical to be ISO 14000 certified or 45000 certified while we are not in compliance, or we get some fines from, for example, Ministry of Environment or Ministry of Labor about some violation with regard to the legal requirements. Again, this part, I'll cover the legal framework and the risk framework. As you know, maybe one of the most important changes in the standards once started the Annex SL, which we can see it very clearly in the ISO 9001, in the 45001, in the 14001. We are talking about what's called risk management. This started in since maybe the changes in 2015. What I want just to emphasize here, that on any company, there are two levels of, I would say, risk management. There's something called corporate risk management, and there's something called operational risk management. When we talk about corporate, Now, all the new standards after 2015, now they have very clear requirements to do what's called, it's not called in the standard corporate risk, but what's they are referring that to normally we call it corporate risk management. In other words, all the risks that might affect the strategic direction of any organization. And of course, when we are talking about quality, maybe the relevant risks are different from environmental, from health and safety risks, but we have to do that. Most of the companies, they do it through what's called SWOT analysis, and they identify, and then they come up with the relevant risks and they evaluate them. Maybe one of the most important, for example, risk related to all organizations regard to corporate, when we are talking about health and safety or environment, for example, the legal compliance. What if we are not in legal compliance? Because if you think about it, if we are not in legal compliance with, for example, environmental or health and safety requirements, that might lead to close out the company, which is one of the most important risks even for our business. We are talking about quality here, or the business part of it. So for many companies, when they talk about health and safety or environmental aspects, they have to look at the legal requirements, risks. They have to look at maybe the cultural risk, because as you know, with regard to environment and safety, the culture is really important. We can see that in most of the companies, when they work on their management systems, environment, health and safety, they spend a lot of time to try to change the culture, to make it more health and safety culture, more environmental culture, to convince people to work upon that, which is very important. That's why this might be one of the most important risks in many companies. In other words, if our people culture is not related to, they are not following, for example, the rules, they are not following the requirements related to health environment. Maybe sometimes some companies, they will link it with the turnover of employees, because whenever we have a high turnover employees, that means the new employees, they need more training, more awareness about environment, health and safety, and if they are not following that, again, this will affect our performance. If you see in this slide, all companies, they have to determine their internal and external issues according to the standard, if you know 4.1, 4.2, and they have to identify their interested parties and relevant requirements, and they have to come up with the relevant risks and opportunities. Then this needs to be reflected back in their processes. Again, this is called corporate risk, and this is covered in ISO 9001, 14000, and 45001. But when we are talking about operational risk, as you know, operational risk in the organizations, now we are talking about the operations. Maybe this is not very clear in the ISO 9001, but for sure it is very clear in the ISO 14001 and in the ISO 40001. In other words, in the ISO 40001, we need to do what's called HIRA, hazard identification and risk assessment, for all the processes. For example, in production, in maintenance, even in our offices, regard, for example, to the ergonomics, regard to our practices in the production, what might be the hazards there. And we have to identify all the hazards. We need to assess them. We need to come up with controls and to evaluate these controls, assess them again to make sure they are acceptable for us. Again, we cannot say that we have zero risk. The risk is always there, but we have something called acceptable risk. Acceptable risk that we can live with it. That means that according to the current controls, the risk has been reduced to a level that is acceptable for us. Of course, this is different from a company to another. For some sectors, for example, maybe in construction, I would say that they can tolerate higher risk than, for example, in aviation sector, you know, because the impact here is different from the impact there. So for the health and safety, for the environment, there should be some sort of operational risk assessment that are related to the processes on different departments, different functions. But of course, we have to make sure that they are linked or aligned with the corporate risk. I mean, maybe one of the issues that we can see in the audit companies, that you will find some sort of misalignment between the corporate risks and the operational risk. We have to make sure that they are aligned and they are talking to each other and they have the same language. So we need to consider that. And I think most of the companies who are certified to ISO 14001 or 14001, they have called something called HIRA with regard to health and safety, and they have called something called environmental aspects register with regard to the environmental management system. The second point that I will cover, which is related maybe to what's called megatrends or occupational safety and the health mental as part of it. And as we know that after maybe during and after COVID-19 pandemic, that in some new, I would say, mental issues have arisen because simply there are some new stress, type of stress, maybe something led to even financial issues, maybe even for legal issues, you know, lockdown, all these things. And to tell you the truth, many companies have started to look at that. And they try to react and to address all these new, I would say, mental or psychological health issues related to their staff. But maybe you will, maybe you know that, but even the ISO 14000 standard already covered these points. But to tell you the truth, they were not very important. Maybe most of the companies, they were not looking at that because simply mostly they were looking at the physical, I would say, health and safety hazards and risks within their companies. So, for example, in LRQA or for many companies that we know that they have started new actions or they have started new functions related to mental support or psychological support for their employees, because they know there are now new hazards and risks related to this part. And to tell you the truth, even for me, because before pandemic, we used to go and we for on-site companies, either for audit and training. But once we start sitting at home, working from home, by the way, until this point, we are working from home. For me, even I have back pain, very bad back pain. I never felt about that. I would say maybe, well, age, of course, but I would say that because the time of sitting on the desk without thinking about that, all of these start coming again. How the standard covers this, I will just go through some parts of the standard that that's related to mental or psychological health, which is very clear in the standard. But again, maybe this was not covered before by many companies. First of all, if we go to the terms and conditions, the ISO 40001 standard, when we are talking about injury and health definition, if you see this adverse effect on the physical, mental part or condition of the person. So when we are talking about mental, this is related again to something that might relate to stress or how we think about things and so on. Now again, in the scope, if we go to the scope of the standard, which is page 1, clause number 1, we are talking about wellness and well-being. Again, many companies now they are really interested in the well-being of their people, how they can make them more happy, how they can make them more loyal, how they can make them more interactive with their work. And if you go to the 4.2, which is related to the interested party, which is one of the new clauses in the standard, again, we need to understand the needs and expectations of our interested parties. And of course, according to the ISO 40001 standard, one of the most important, actually, it is the most important interested party which is our employees, our workers. And I'm sure, because I'm an employee and most of you are employees, one of the most important requirements or expectations for you to have good health. Of course, when we talk about good health, not only physical health, we are talking about mental health, we are talking about psychological health as well. So if you notice, it is in the standard, but maybe this was not really addressed before. Again, if we are talking about the policy itself, it talks about L-health. Again, L-health, it's not only something related to my kidney or my backbone, or we're talking about many things, and should include a commitment to participation from all employees about that. As I mentioned, one of the most important clauses in the standard, which is related to the operational, health and operational risk assessment, which is called HIRA, Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment. And if you notice here, one of the requirements that we need to cover as per the standard, how work is organized and social factors, including workload, work hours, leadership, and the culture in the organization. So we are talking about many things that are not just affecting our physical health or our physical safety. We talk about social factors, as you know, workload. The truth, I think now, especially in office work, one of the most important risks for people are working hours, are stress, how they feel that they have deadlines that they need to address these deadlines. They have to meet them. For some people, they cannot sleep at night because they are thinking about all these things. I'm sure all of us have faced these situations. So again, this needs to be part of your hazard identification and risk assessment. I know many companies, they have maybe reduced working time, especially when we're talking about working from home. They ask their people, please try to organize yourself so you can have, for example, 7-8 working hours. After that, please don't go back to the to work. Please try to, for example, every 1 hour, 2 hours, try to walk, try to do anything. Otherwise, you will have after a long, maybe after a while, some health issues. They establish new departments or functions who support their employees psychologically. So I can call them, I can tell them that I'm feeling about that. What do you think? How you can help me? And I think this is a trend now in many companies, especially for the global companies. They have created a new departments or new functions that just to help them, to support them with related to the health or I would say mental issues. Again, this is part of the standard, but maybe most of the companies were not giving them a lot of interest. Now, I think they are very important, and we have to look at that in details. So far, as you see, that we have to have a clear identification of our mental health and to be the truth. After COVID, we start looking at that in more details while we are looking at the HIRA process, the hazard identification assessment. We need to check if the companies have identified this, and even before they were there, but now we are focusing on that to make sure that all people, all companies, they are really covering this part in order not to have a negative impact on well-being of people. Now, maybe the final thing that I will cover, which is related to the organizational benefits of having a certified OH system. Again, I'll go back to the scope. If you notice, even the scope of the standard, it talks about that whenever you are certified, this will enable an organization to provide safe and healthy working conditions for the prevention of work-related injury and health, proactively improve our health and safety performance, of course, eliminate or minimize the risks, and continue to improve the performance and achievement of our objectives, which is part of our policy and strategic direction. Of course, in addition to that, reputation is very important. for all companies, and I'm sure that you know, for some companies they are, for example, they are very famous or reputable with good health and safety. Maybe for others, they have bad reputation. That I would say. Again, it ensures that we have a clear legal compliance, and of course, it will reduce the occupational safety cost of employees and turnover. Of course, too many other things. To tell you the truth, from my experience, maybe some of the, I wouldn't say many of the companies, some of the companies, they don't look at the cost of turnover of employees. And for example, sometimes they might reduce, or I would say they don't want to raise salaries, but they don't look at the cost behind. When we hire new people, they will make mistakes. This will cost us more, and I think it is a real negative impact on many companies. I hope that I was not boring in that. Thank you again. And now let me introduce Mr. SV, who was introduced at the beginning. Mr. SV is working for a company, I would say a big company called Hindalco. I welcome him again. Mr. SV, it's really my pleasure to receive you today. So we can have a small chat about your experience, and maybe you can give us a brief of our company, and in addition to your experience as one of our big clients with regard to the health and safety. So, Mr. SV, I would start with. Can you just give us a brief history about your company, Hindalco, and maybe just a brief history about the implementation of health and safety management system within your organization?
Yeah. Good afternoon to all of you. This is my time. Yeah, my time is 12:45, so I don't know where you guys are there, 12:45 p.m. Okay, so my name is S. Vaidyanathan. You can call me Vaidya or SV, like Mohammed was telling. So thanks, Mohammed, for calling me in. So about Hindalco. See, Hindalco is a $20 billion company having presence in 4 continents. And Hindalco is an Indian-based company, and we own Novelis as a subsidiary, which is a US-based, and we also own Aleris that is merged with Novelis. So in that way, we have a presence in 4 continents. So as far as my role is concerned, I am restricted to the Indian operations of Hindalco. That's what we call Hindalco India. About Hindalco, it has been rated the highest ESG company, ESG in the area of metals. So we are into manufacturing aluminium, downstream aluminium products, copper, and downstream copper products. And we have the world's biggest aluminium refinery, and which is also the most cost-effective alumina refinery. And also our copper smelting operation is one of the biggest in the world, maybe third biggest in the world. So this is about the company, and about Hindalco India operations specific model. We own 24 mines, that is the bauxite mines and the coal mines. Then we have all the supply of all the stream, starting from alumina refining, smelting, and of course for smelting we need power. So we have coal-based power production plants, and then we have our downstream activities based upon the aluminium. So Mohan, this is a very brief introduction.
Okay, great. Can you give us maybe a history about health and safety management system? When did you start that? When you were certified? How does it take time from you, effort for the implementation of the system? And maybe about the idea behind that. Why did you go for that? And the benefits of implementing this management system.
Okay, thank Mohan. So, as you know, Indians, especially I'm from southern part, we speak a little bit fast. So I try to slow down the way I speak. Okay, that's the first thing. And you, Mohan, you can tell me if I'm too fast. Okay, the first benefit, let me start from the benefits. See, every company, when it has to run its operations, it has to have a safety methodology and all those things. But why ISO 45001 or its previous avatar, OSAS 18001, then it became ISO 45001? It puts the company's safety in a right perspective. See, the first thing is what we are doing is a systematic identification, hazard identification and risk analysis. See, previously we know to run a company, yes, to get the factory license, we should have this, we should have that. But ISO 45001 gives us the systematic way of identifying the hazards and doing a risk analysis of those hazards. So in that way, the company, the business is going to be excellently benefited so that you sustain your operations because you know what are the hazards which you have. That's one thing. And second thing is the standard which has gone into a change where it forces you to have a risk-based thinking. See, previously, as far as operations and other things are concerned, as far as the factory produces, it is fine. There is no accident, it is fine. But the risk-based thinking gives you to protect the company from going into any losses or going in for unforeseen accidents or closure, which is the end point. That's one. That's another. Then the third, which we look at it, the operational control. Once we know the risk, and there are the risks which we can eliminate, like in the initial slides Mohammad was explaining. And there are certain risks which you have to live with it, but at the same time, you need to control. That's where the operational control comes in place. So this is where the engagement of the employees, understanding what is the risk which they are managing for the company, making them aware. So this standard gives you a systematic way how to make them. The another thing is the performance evaluation. Again, I would go back to systematic way. Previously, we used to evaluate the performance of safety. But when you have a safety management system, you will ask how many hazards or how many, near misses you have identified. Have you identified the behavior-based issues in your area? So these I call these things as lead indicators. Because an accident has happened or there is an incident has happened, whichever way you call lost workman days has happened. However, those were all the lag indicators. The lead indicators are these things. So the implementation of an occupational health and safety management system, as per the standard, gives you this the pre-runners and the tracking the lead indicators. Okay, I brought it to at the end of the benefit, but that is the first benefit. That is the status of compliance to the statutory and regulatory requirements. Yes, as long as the factory inspector comes or the statutory fellow comes and inspects your place and finds those issues and issues a notice. When you have a strong internal auditing system, and the guys are also reporting about the issues about complaints, and we also need to educate the guys about what are the for his work. We start with for your work, what is the statutory and regulatory requirements, like against Factory Act, what you need to complain against other acts, the provisions. Each state of India has got different acts. So what is your role? So in that way, it gives the status of compliance. So Mona, I briefed about the benefits. So where do you want me to go further?
No, great. That's very important. And maybe I just want to add a comment. You mentioned about internal audit. To tell you the truth, and then maybe this is very important for all our attendees, because sometimes for some companies they might say, "Oh, okay, we are implementing health and safety system. Why do we need a certification?" To tell you the truth, one of the most important benefits for certification, auditing, because you know human nature. whenever there is audit, either external or internal, I think our interest to comply with all requirements would be much higher than just implement the system. And this is one of the, I would say, pillars of governance systems. And I'm sure you feel the benefit of that. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
it's very important.
See, one of the eye opener during the LRQA team coming and auditing us is in the area of mock drills. See, when we look at it in the Indian companies, the mock drill means maybe once in a month or once in 2 months, you ring a bell and the whole company moves out and all those things. That is happening. But when the LRQA team asked, what is localized emergencies which you test? See, it is not the whole company will get affected. There is an overflow, let us say, one of the pond. It is not going to affect the whole company, but it's going to affect a localized. So do you conduct a mock drill of this localized emergencies, which comes from your hazard identification, where those hazards you cannot eliminate, but you need to be prepared to face them. So that is one excellent basic value, because we have to run the company. There are so many customers we need to service, so we cannot keep the company closed because of one of the safety issue. So there is a social standing also is there. So that is an excellent benefit, one of the excellent benefits. Of course, there are so many other benefits, like there is a external body which is going to oversee you, and which is so in that way also things goes even in the business as usual also in alignment with the requirements of the standard. Yeah,
exactly. Did you face? Do you think that you have faced any challenges during maybe the implementation of the OH system, or during even during the audit certification? And maybe you can tell us how did you overcome them?
Yeah. See, one is the important challenge is the standard calls for performance indicators and the metrics, which you have to align it as per your policy and your KPIs which you arrive at. So naturally, in the initial thought process for safety, it will be only on the lagging indicators like zero accidents, the lost work hours, and all those things. But we cannot wait till such time. So we have to have the lead indicators. So arriving at this lead indicators and lag indicators, we need to engage the workers, because the person who is close to the work only knows what can happen before a mishap happens. So he understands, like if you have a hot mill which we are rolling, so he knows before the hot mill is going to be in danger, there's going to be a fire, what are all these symptoms it will show. So naturally we need to monitor those things. So that is one of the challenge, and which we really added value to us. Then of course I talked about the mock drills, where definitely that's a challenge which we need to arrive at. And the biggest challenge is the standard asks for engagement of the workers in any change which you bring in. Any change which that's one of the standards requirements. So any change which you bring in, or you add a new, for example, you add a new equipment, or you bring in a change in a process which is going to you do a hazard identification risk analysis. So those hazards needs to be communicated to the workers, to the employees who are engaged in that process, and you need to take it. That's a standards mandatory requirement. So naturally, the safety, from the safety perspective, our engagement with the workers have increased. It has really benefited the company, because the ownership is transferred to them. So what we did is slowly we pushed the ownership to them. Of course, we are accountable as a manager, but the ownership of the process, ownership of the overcoming the safety issues, we have given to them. Then, of course, when we looked at, I have done the integration of the 15 manufacturing locations and the corporate office as a single certification. That was the biggest challenge. Of course, For LRQA within India also, it's the first time they're looking into such a huge, operations. Because when I say huge operations, I'll tell you, in our refinery, biggest refinery, there is every day there are 10,000 to 20,000 contract laborers who come inside. That's a scale. So we have 15 manufacturing locations. So many people, and all these systems needs to be integrated. So that is where the standardization of the processes, standardization of understanding of the various requirements of the standard within Hindalco, or how do we look at those things which we have overcome during this process of certification. Yeah.
Oh, good. I will be able to focus on the term standardization and consistency, which is very important in all Azure standards. So finally, Mr. Vidya, any advice for the companies who are planning to go for implementation of these standard and certification from your long experience in that?
Yes. Thanks, Mohammed, for that question. So when we look at future trends within maybe 1 year or 2 years, with the COVID lockdown bringing in, see change, you dwelt upon the wellness, mental health, all those parts. And also in all over the world, in the companies, in the manufacturing companies or any company which you take, there is a new set of guys who are entering. They are called the Gen Z. Generation Z, Gen Z guys who are millennials, who were born after 1990s and in 2000, and they live in a different world. If you talk to your daughter, grandsons, and all that, they live in a different world. The way look at things are different, and that is going to pose a challenge, coupled with the IIoT devices. For example, you have robotics coming into place. You have drones, being used in the companies. See, for example, I'll just quote one example. In my Taloja place, where we are doing an expansion project. So we try to assess that area using a drone. So we were doing a drone, and there is an eagle which starts attacking the drone. It came started attacking because we have a huge forest area. So in that area, this eagle is put up its nest and it's coming. We never anticipated an eagle has got a nest. So now that becomes an hazard. When we look at it, that becomes an hazard. That is one thing about new experiences which are coming. And the companies which are already certified, for them to take over this new challenges, it is okay. They need to expand and look at it. But the companies which are yet to do a systematic way of doing things, they need to consider beyond traditionally what we have done for alignment of the safety management systems. For example, I'm telling employee wellness, it has gone, then flexible work timings. It has created different types of hazards, okay, in the office areas and another place. Then, of course, incident management documentation. See, again, we have to do incident management documentation as well. We are concerned paper, and the person observes and he looks at it. But we have now devices, we have camera, we have sensors everywhere which has been placed, where the capturing of incidences can happen from there. So these kind of newer trends which are emerging, and also gig economy. See, again, I'm telling why I want to touch upon gig economy. Previously, we assume an employee comes inside and he or she is going to be there for another 10 years, 4 years, 5 years. But there are now jobs which are coming for 4 months. The person will come for 4 months and work and go away. That is what is the gig economy, new emerging gig economy. And that is going to have very clear, we have to induct that guy into the safety and the working environment and get the work done, and this guy will go off within 4 months. So that requires the crashing of the training period and induction period. So like this, there are a lot of challenges. I can go on and on. Mohamed, back to you.
Thank you. That was the interesting. Thanks for the experience. Thanks for the all ideas that you have mentioned. Really very thankful for that. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Ayman, I think now we'll go for the questions. You are muted, Ayman.
Ayman, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. So yes, Muhammad, we have a lot of questions in the chat box, so it's a good time to go through them.
Okay, yes, I'll do that. Yeah. Why the PDCA cycle start with the clause 4.1? What are the clauses from 1 to 3? Okay. According to Annex SL, now all standards are following what's called structural. There is a clear structure for that, which start with clause number 1 until clause number 10. But normally, clause number 1 is called the scope. That I have covered part of it of that. Just it tells us about the scope of the standard, why it's there, what's the benefit of that, why do we need to do. The second one, which is related, and third one, which is related to terms and definitions and normative references. So it's just like references. But the actual requirements starts with clause number 4. Actually, not 4.1, starts with the clause number 4, which is related 4.1. They are what's called subclause 4.1, 4.2. Then we go for clause number 5, 5.1, 2, 3, 6, and so on. So I would say because the requirements start with the clause number 4, but 1, 2, 3, they are just like overview on the standard. Where are the sources of legal requirements? Can you please list? This is a very important question, but when we talk about legal requirements, we have to make sure first of all, we have to identify the legal requirements that are applicable for us. As you know, in each country, there's different legal requirements from other countries. And even in the same country, for example, when we're talking about manufacturing, like Hindalco aluminum manufacturing plant, maybe the legal requirements will be different from restaurant, will be different from, I would say, construction company. So in each country, there are different legal requirements from other countries, and in each country, there's maybe different legal requirements. It depends on the sector that we are working in. And to tell you the truth, for some countries, and maybe for most of the countries, this is one of the most challenging things that they face to identify or to know about all the legal requirements applicable for them. And because in some countries they are not centralized in one, I would say, governmental department. Maybe for some countries they have to go, for example, to the Ministry of Labor, and they have to go to Ministry of Health, and they have to go to Ministry of Food, for example, FDA. So it depends on the legal company, on the country, and it depends on the applicable legal requirements for that. There is a question: is the corporate risk management is where we initiate risk register? Yes, the simple answer, yes. But we have to make sure that when we are talking about risk register, we are talking about the risks related for the whole organization. So this is called corporate. For some people, they call it strategic risk. So whenever we are talking about the overall risk related to the whole company, for example, we are talking about in general legal issues, we are talking about in general increased turnover. This is the corporate risk register. When we are talking about operational that are related to the operations, the hazards related to the operation, this is called operational risk register. Again, as I mentioned, in the ISO 9001, what's required only the corporate risk register, even though we see some companies, they are implementing local corporate and operational risk register, but through 9001, what's required is only the corporate, but for the 14,000 and 45,000, it's required both the corporate that are related to the risks for the whole company, overall risks that are linked with the strategy and so on. However, for the operational, it's related to the operations. How we can involve our stakeholder on ensuring and improving the performance of occupational and safety system. Very good. When we're talking about stakeholders, by the way, there's a clear requirement in the standard, but they don't call them in the standard stakeholder. They call them interested parties. So if you are referring to the interested parties, I think again communication is very important. It's really important to make sure that we have effective and strong communication channels with all our interested parties and stakeholders. If you are talking about stakeholders and shareholders and people who are interested from financial point of view, again, we have to have a strong communication channels. But I think in this case, if we are talking about people who are looking or they are care more about finance and money, we have to come up with accounts, with figures to show them the importance of having an effective health and safety system, how it will reduce the cost, especially with regard to the turnover employees, with regard to mistakes, with the non-conformities, with fines, with whatever. That's why normally we tell our companies, our clients, please look at the hidden cost behind the employees turnover. Because to tell the truth, if you look at that, I'm sure you might change the financial terms for other people. How can we measure the OH&S performance parameters in the organization towards focusing on continual improvement? Okay, great. As Mr. Vidya mentioned, normally we have what's called leading and lagging indicators. One of the most important lagging indicator for occupational safety, which is accidents, incidents. So the main objective of having this standard, a preventive standard, to reduce the accidents. But of course, this might be translated into other KPIs, or I would say indicators. Yani for many companies, they use what's called LTI or LTA, which is lost time accident or lost time incident. Because sometimes when we say, well, we have, for example, 3 accidents last year, right? What about these 3 accidents? Are they big? Are they serious? Because maybe one of them might be fatality. Maybe one of them might be just paper cut. So I think one of the most important indicators for our performance to link it with the lost time accident. For example, if there is a broken limb, you might say, well, we have 1 month lost time. For other accidents, it's only 2 days. For other accidents, it's only 1 hour. So maybe linking all of them together with lost time accident or lost time incident, this will be important. But I would say one of the most indicators as well will be the number of reported, what we call them NMSO, near misses or safety observations. Whenever, and this is by the way, one of the lagging indicators, because whenever we report more near misses, safety observation, that means we'll take more actions that will reduce the risk of having an accidents or incidents which will be part of the leading indicators, lagging indicators and the accidents and the lost time accident and lost time incident. Okay, great. Which standard, ISO 14000 and ISO 27916, is a trend in the future? Does both these standards complement each other? I would say maybe the trend will be for the ISO 14001 because again, because of the requirements, because of the details, because of all these things, I think this will be the trend for the future.
I just want to add
please.
here, Muhammad, that sorry for interrupting, just want to add that there's a lot of standards, right? There's more than 150 standards worldwide. So as with 45,000, I think there is 45003, which is in the psychological metrics. There is also a guideline or ergonomics. Even for 14,000, for say, there's also other standards for carbon dioxide capturing, storage, and so forth. And there's a lot of standards. The message is, I think, is more important that it depends on the company needs. and requirements. What's important for us as a company? Is it health and safety, and what aspects of health and safety, which also could be based on what we provide as an end service. So I think, from my opinion, just want to give my 2 cents. It depends on the company objectives and future ambition.
Exactly. Anyway, Ivan, that was really the last question. Thank you all for that. But I think, Ivan, you need to mention something as well here.
It's not a secret. Just want to wrap up really, and thanks Mohammed for the time given today. It was very brief, and I would also like to thank Mr. Vedya for sharing his experience. It's always interesting and always value adding to get experience from someone who has 35 years plus in the industry, not only in India, although he's based in India, but we were having a chat before the call, and he's been all over the world to an extent. So thanks a lot for sharing your experience, Mr. Vedya. At the end, I would say, to wrap up, everyone, is that safety, environment, whatever it is, at the end of the day, these are management systems, right? If implemented in the right way, especially these 2 standards, will really help you protect your assets, protect your people, satisfy your internal stakeholders, which employees, as Mohammed mentioned, and also satisfy external parties and the external stakeholders. And also, even as Mohammed mentioned, your reputation, the company's reputation would add value to your company, to your employees, to your clients, and even to the environment, right? We're part of this world at the end of the day. Having said that, I know it might be complex. You've seen a lot of slides, a lot of information, which could be overwhelming, but that's why we're here to help you. So as LRQA, what we do is we do gap audits, pre-assessments. We can walk through this journey. We can conduct training courses based on your specific needs. And we're partners. That's what we call ourselves. We are partnering with you. It's not a one-time thing. It's a long-term relationship. So we will make sure that in each step of the way, we're guiding you in the right direction and make sure you're implementing these management systems for your benefit and the benefit of your employees and the benefit of the organization. So thanks a lot again once more. At the end, you will receive, at the end of this webinar, you will receive.
Yeah.
I am on mute?
Yeah. Now you have come alive. So I said I would like to add a point with
yes.
See, this getting standards implemented, it is actually the basic requirement, because in the future, maybe within 5 years, all the manufacturing have to align with as per UN Sustainability Development Goals, which are really, really tight. So if otherwise the companies have to close, because that's going to be mandated by the countries, by the government. So we need to start it. So better, guys, if you have not started, please start. Yeah, Ivan,
absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Vidya. So everyone, you will receive a short survey. Please give us your feedback. Tell us how well you experienced this, and if you have any recommendations for any other topics in the future, we'll be more than happy to share this with you. So you'll receive the surveys shortly. And if you have any other questions which we couldn't cover during this session, or if you think of anything else moving forward, please reach out to us. You can reach us at inquiries.ae@lrqa.com. One more time, that's inquiries.ae@lrqa.com or inquiries.in@lrqa.com. Thank you very much, and it's wonderful to be with you today, and looking forward to talk to you or see you soon. Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.